Welcome everyone to Touring the AFC South. I'm your host, Mike Patton. And tonight, want to talk about, people concentrating on physical drills of football. They talk about, running, jumping, all those type of things. The healing of players, all those things. They seem to want to talk about physical therapy a lot. But one thing that they really don't talk about is the atypical ways that players actually heal. Whether it be some go to yoga, some do go to ballet, some do ballet too. For those that think it's funny, Eddie George did ballet. So there you go. But I wanted tonight to bring on someone that is an expert in yoga and can kind of give us a little bit more of the intricacies and how it can help NFL football players to get better, to be at their physical peak, I should say. Everyone, welcome YogaGirlSy to the program. How you doing?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm doing great. Just trying to survive the heat in Tennessee right now, but I'll be okay.
Okay, I hear you. Yeah, we have that hurricane or storm that was downgraded to basically it's just heavy rain, which I actually like. So we had a little bit of weather over here too in the Northeast.
Got you. Yeah, got a little rain, but we had a little rain like Seattle, but that's neither here nor there. But
right.
Of course, you got the NFL football players, and they talk about bench pressing and running and doing the 3-cone drill and all those different things. But let's talk about yoga because you got the Giants, Jaguars, the Saints. You got Leonard Williams of the New York Giants doing yoga. So we got to get into that this time around. So I got to know, when were you first introduced to yoga?
Well, I really wasn't introduced to yoga. I sought it out because I had heard about it and heard that it had healing properties, not just physically able to heal you, but mentally and emotionally and keep you grounded and just long-term benefits to it. And so I was facing just kind of a pivot in my life. And I had wanted to be a doctor, and I got waitlisted at Meharry, decided that I didn't want to go to medical school and be a doctor. So now what, right? I didn't have any other thing planned. So I said, I'm going to go do yoga. I've heard about it. Maybe it'll work, maybe it won't, but I'm just going to give it a shot. So I joined this gym where I lived, and I took my first yoga class. Now I was an athlete and I'm still, pretty good shape. And sometimes people think I'm in my 20s because, I keep everything nice and tight. But anyway, the class was Saturday at 10:15, and it was a 75-minute class, and the instructor's name was Jim. And it was everything I thought that yoga was, and then some. I sat in the front of the class. The mirror was right there. Jim was this tall, very muscular guy, nice and lean. He had great posture. His instructions were clear. And because I was already an athlete and had an awareness of body alignment, it was a little bit easier for me to get into it, but it was challenging. And part of the challenge was the fact that you had to be still. You had to go slowly. You couldn't power through it. You couldn't grit your way through it. You had to breathe in and out of your nose and not in this in and out of your mouth, rapid fire. I played soccer, I ran track, fight or flight type of a response. So even though there was that muscle memory of how to use my body, there was something new that I was learning. And I really liked that mental challenge. And, because you had to go to a different space mentally, there's a level of vulnerability that you have when you first start taking yoga. And I really embraced that, and I really loved it. Plus, it was a distraction from me trying to figure out what in the world I was going to do with my life on Monday after I decided to take that pivot into being an entrepreneur and just, rolling the dice on myself.
Gotcha. Okay. So let everyone know what you do with yoga these days.
Oh my goodness. How much time do you have? I can sit and talk about yoga all day long. With my private clients, sometimes I talk about different kind of mats. Like it has to be this texture and this, that, and the third. I love talking about yoga. So I'm just going to be very targeted. So we're not going all over the place with talking about yoga. One of the things that's important about yoga is the fact that yoga and meditation, people might think that it's different, but really it's the same in the sense that you're connecting your breath to your body. You are learning how to breathe the appropriate way, a way that helps you to lower your resting heart rate, where you are actually expanding the lungs and increasing your breathing ability. When I first heard that, I was like, that ain't true. That don't even make no sense. How does that breathe? That you can breathe better? I've been breathing all my life. But it's true. when you learn how to inhale in the belly, expanding the belly, which really means you're not breathing in the shoulders, and so your lungs are able to expand. So that's really kind of what's happening when you're doing that. And so being able to do that, you connect your breath to stillness, and that is meditation, or you connect your breath to movement, which people would call yoga. Because sometimes you have this moving meditation, and that's yoga. Sitting still with the breath is meditation. So when I'm teaching my classes, or when I have my private clients, understanding that very basic component to meditation and to yoga is the entryway to being able to do it yourself, and to really getting deep into the healing modality, like the healing part of it, and not just the physical component to it, but the spiritual and mental and energetic component to it as well. So what I'm doing with yoga these days is a couple of things. I did some child yoga classes with 7-year-olds. It was a lot of 12 of them, 7. And for 7-year-olds, you're going to have 30-minute classes, smaller, shorter times. And, separate from the whole drama that unfolds with 7-year-olds, they're crying, upset, the other person's helping them, they won't sit still, blah, blah, blah. They really enjoyed it when we got to the yoga part to it. Teaching them how to connect their breath to stillness through stories and through, interplay with the kids, doing certain postures and having interactive dynamic classes is something that really helps them to move their bodies in a way where it's more controlled. And they start to learn breath control and body control at such a young age. And because yoga is something that people are doing more than, say, 10, 20 years ago, the kids really knew, other postures. They all knew how to do their fingers like this and put them on their knees, because that's what you see all the time. So I've started doing that, working with children. It's energetic. It's 30 minutes of a combination of excitement, a little terror, because they're so flexible. They do certain things you don't want them to do, and you're just like, oh my goodness. But I started with doing that. I also teach group exercise classes online because of, the pandemic and all of that. But I also have private clients. I have private clients in going to their homes, which is people who I know, and also online with my private clients. So that's what I'm doing professionally with yoga, my online classes and my private sessions. And by the way, I absolutely spoil my clients, because you get a chance to work with someone individually. You start to know their schedule. You start to know what it is that they need. I often make videos for them that I think they might need, like 5-minute here, 10-minute, 15 minutes. If they're like high executive clients and they only have 15, 20 minutes to do something, they can do this. As a matter of fact, I'm going to make a video when we get off here for one of my clients. So you see the progress, you understand how their body moves, how their body works, how they breathe, what challenges they might have. And so when you have your private clients, you definitely spend your time thinking about them outside of the class, because you're helping this person, especially if they're high-end executive, to slow down for a second and to catch their breath, and to take care of their bodies. Because when you're dealing in a stressful situation, like what we're all dealing with right now, being able to stop yourself from going into a fight or flight response is more important than ever. So I like to make sure that my clients, as well as my participants in my group classes, understand all of those things.
Gotcha. So sounds like you're doing a lot of teaching yoga to the world.
That's the goal.
Gotcha. Okay. Now that everyone knows that you do yoga and what all you do with yoga, of course, let's say NFL players in yoga. How can that yoga benefit them physically?
That's a really good question, and I'm really glad that you asked that. Physically, yoga can help NFL players at different levels. The low-hanging fruit, or the easiest one that people might be able to understand, is it helps them to become more flexible. But the term flexible doesn't really address that before you're flexible, you have to release tension. So there are three different steps to it. There's releasing the tension, then there's flexibility, or being flexible, which is what people know. Then there's mobility. Okay. So if you wake up out of the bed cold and you do a forward bend or a back bend and a forward bend, the back bend that you do out of bed in the morning, like when I do my sun salutations, is not as deep as after I've been practicing throughout the day, or even teaching and demonstrating, or walking around, because you're warming up the body, you're getting things going. So when you first do that first back bend, your body is not warm, and you might feel some tension. So that's one example of it's kind of just not being like awakened at that time. But when you have a certain point where you are no longer able to bend forward or or sit with your legs crossed, when you inhale and think about that level of that location of tension, and then you exhale and you release, that's how you release your tension. A lot of times you have these football players, they have muscle layer on top of muscle, on top of muscle, on top of muscle, and they're not doing any releasing. They're not doing, breathing in and then exhaling through the nose, which makes a difference, thinking about that point of tension and releasing that tension. So if you have all of these muscles and you don't have a release point for the point of tension, okay, it prevents you from having your flexibility. So you go from releasing tension to flexibility, which means that is a range of motion that is within your body. Okay, that's a range of motion that you have naturally. Like when I can sit down with my legs straight forward, inhale my arms over my head sideways, and exhale and go flat and put my face in my legs and my knees, because that is a part of my range of flexibility. I can do that right now. That is because that's, within my capabilities. But before I could do that, I had to release tension. That actually is the hardest part, because releasing the tension that we have is due to something that is physical and also psychological. So yoga, so that's the next layer. Yoga also helps you to address, well, why are you tense? Besides the muscles, why do you have this point of tension? When I used to take Bikram yoga before they closed my spot, the teacher would say, the issues are in your tissues, which means whatever is ailing you emotionally, whatever is on your mind constantly, is what keeps you tense, which prevents you from being flexible. Once you've gone through that first phase of tension, release, and then you get to the flexibility where it's in your range, then you get to mobility. Mobility is something that helps keep your spine straight, releasing tension in the groin area, having the lower abdominal muscles to support the lower spine, so you can continue to be mobile as you age. Your mobility, your range of motion. It also helps keep your spine straight, as opposed to hunching over and curling in, which is kind of like how people age. So you have NFL players who also have injuries because the sport is so physical. So you've got scar tissue that you can slowly release, because that's a different kind of tension. Okay. So yoga helps NFL players because they have high stress jobs. They need an opportunity, a place to relax and release from that stress, from the scar tissue that they have, from getting banged up doing their job, from all the muscles they have without releasing the point of tension, and also increasing their flexibility, which helps. It actually helps build muscle because you're releasing some of the fascia around the muscle. But anyway, the flexibility is the counterpart or the complement to the musculature and the muscles, that they have. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, definitely went into depth. I'm like, okay, I'm if I wasn't, if I was listening, I would be taking notes. Hint, hint. But along with the physical parts of yoga, how does it help potentially players mentally?
So that's another good question. I would say two things come to mind immediately: your ability to focus and concentrate, and your ability to release and to not to add layers of stress to your life. When you have when your resting heart rate is so high and you're so responsive because you have not learned how to ignore stimulus, then everything is a reaction. Your body is always in fight or flight. Your heart is always racing over stuff that's not even important. Like if you don't let someone, merge into traffic. You see on the news sometimes road rage turns into shootouts. Really? Just let the man in. Just slow down. Let him merge. So there's the responsive part where people have to learn how to ignore the stimulus. When I did Bikram yoga, and I still do Bikram yoga, but I mean all the time before the studios closed, you have to ignore the sweat. You have to ignore the bright lights. You learn to manage the heat and the humidity, and you have to stand still in between postures. And if you did Bikram yoga in New York City and any of the studios there, especially where I used to go, you had to stand still. Doing that taught me how to ignore stimulus. Over time, certain things just didn't even bother me. Like things that used to really make me angry or that I would even notice, those things don't bother me anymore. So it's important to learn how to connect your breath and to control your breath to lower your heart rate. Can you tell me the second part of that question? Because I got off into the psychological part to it. I know there was another part to the question. Sorry.
It's just the mental part of how it can help athletes and football players in general.
Concentration. The other thing so the first one is knowing what stimulus is important and what is not, regulating your breath so much so that your resting heart rate lowers, and then stuff that used to bother you before doesn't bother you anymore. That's the first one. The second one is focus. When you are in yoga, in a yoga class, in a posture, especially some of the more challenging postures that people have, the one that I have that I love is bow. It's the one that you can see. The concentration and focus you have to be able to get to the point that you can do that posture is because you have learned to release tension. You have learned to ignore stimulus. You have learned to focus and concentrate. You've learned to listen to the instructions. Okay. The more yoga you do, regardless of where you start, regardless of what shape you're in, skinny, big, whatever, it doesn't matter. Wherever you start, your practice progresses because you listen and you concentrate. And because of that, you learn to focus. People who get into these difficult postures that we see that we think are so difficult, the posture itself is simple, but the focus and concentration is what you need to get that posture down. Yoga teaches you how to focus and concentrate. And when you're on that field with all these bodies flying and the ball flying and all this noise, you have to focus and concentrate. So it helps you with your resting heart rate and learning how to ignore stimulus, and it helps you to focus and concentrate.
Gotcha. I mean, wow. You got me thinking about what really should I have stuck in it when I tried to do it before my senior year of college. But going on to from that, since we talked about the physical and the additional things that it helps,
Mhm.
I want to get into a player and a coach in the AFC South. Now,
Mhm.
these players have both been associated with injuries and health issues. First one is Julio Jones. Of course, he got traded from the Atlanta Falcons to the Tennessee Titans this year. Of course, it's been talked about regarding him and injuries issues in the past, including a hamstring issue that was reoccurring last season.
Mhm.
Um, could you break down what type of yoga could assist him in potentially limiting the risk of injury again with that hamstring, or kind of, I guess helping out in that aspect?
So before I give my opinion, Mr. Julio Jones, if you are watching, I am not a physician or a physical therapist or an orthopedic surgeon. Just my disclaimer. When people, when people have tight hamstrings, one of the reasons is because they, I don't know what his abdominals are doing, but learning how to activate your lower abdominals in a way that's different than playing football. I ran track and I played soccer and I've always been active. And I had and have a six pack. And so I have strong abdominals. But when you're doing yoga, you're moving your body in a completely different way. Okay. And so in that way, what you're doing is you're engaging your core to support your lower spine. When you support your lower spine, you support your lower back. And when you're able to do that, then you take some of the stress and the work out of your glutes and your hamstrings. Okay. So if someone has tight hamstrings, and you find that often in yoga, what I do is have them, they would, start standing up, engage their core, arms over their head sideways. So, but you bring your arms over your head sideways and you interlace your fingers on top. Okay. So your fingers are like this on top or just connected. And so you engage the core, you pull the abdominals back to the spine, not in a way like if you're about to run or anything like that, but it's a nice, slow, controlled motion or movement that you do, and you hold it. You exhale as you forward fold from the waist or from the hips. Put your hands on the ground wherever you feel the first time you feel the first spot that you feel tension, and then you release your neck. A lot of times people have their head up, you release your neck. So as you keep your core engaged, your whole backside is releasing tension. We're not trying to be flexible first. We're not trying to have your hand on the ground, face to the knees, toes, heels together. We're not doing that. At the point of tension, whatever that might be, you put your hands on the mat and you release down the backside while you continue to engage your core to keep supporting your lower spine. And so you inhale and you exhale and you breathe into the point of tightness. So you're thinking, so what does it mean when you say breathe into the point of tightness? What does that mean? What that means is I'm going to focus on the point that's tight. That's the hamstrings, right? And so when you do that, you start to focus on that area and you feel that tension. And then you release the tension without inhaling, number one, and then focusing on that point of tension. You don't even know you have it. You don't even know that you're carrying all this tension. When you first start doing yoga, you don't realize how much tension you hold. Not inflexibility, but tension. When you inhale and then think about the point where you feel tension, only then are you able to release it because you didn't even know that you were holding on to that. That is something that I would recommend. I would recommend learning how to isolate, thinking about your hamstrings, releasing those hamstrings in that way. Okay, so you're forward folding, you hold it for however long. You engage your core and you inhale as you come up in one whole piece, and then you exhale your arms down by your side. That is what I would recommend. And if Mr. Julio Jones or anyone else wants a demonstration, they can reach out to me in various ways, which we'll discuss at the end, and I'll do a demonstration.
Gotcha. Okay. All right. Now let's see. Moving on from Julio Jones, let's talk about Jacksonville Jaguars coach Urban Meyer.
Okay.
Now, he has been known to have, to let stress wreak havoc on his body, resulting in health issues. Of course, he left the Florida job. He had a little bit of a head issue, I think, in Ohio State as well. The Jaguars aren't expected to be successful this year. They aren't expecting to be great. How could yoga help him manage the stress he carries with him with every loss? He literally takes it to the heart with every loss, and it seems to wreck his body. What would you recommend?
Well, saying that he takes it to heart is exactly where he's taking it. Again, I'm not a doctor. Let me just let him know. I'm not a doctor. I'm not a cardiologist. Okay. I'm not an ist. So you can put whatever type of doctor in front, and I'm not that. So, but the reality of it is, when you are holding on to stress, you are literally taking it to your heart. Because again, you're putting your body in a fight or flight response mode all the time, and your heart is beating to pump blood to the extremities because you're going to fight or you're going to flee, right? And so if you allow those types of hormones and that type of a response to continue to be on your body, your resting heart rate is elevated. And so it isn't even just taking all of the losses to heart. That's the way you walk around in the world doing regular stuff. And that's not even including what's happening with COVID. On a regular non-COVID day, if you take everything to heart, you are responsive, you are reactive. And so your body is always in that mode. Your heart is working, you literally is working overtime. It's not healthy for your body to be doing that. Then you also are increasing the different hormone levels, etc. So to answer your question, what can he do? I would start him with meditation. I wouldn't even start him with a moving meditation. I would start him with a meditation, because you have to sit still, number one, and learn how to control your thoughts. You don't get rid of your thoughts. People say, have a seat, get nice and comfortable. Then they do this and they're like, clear your mind. You can't clear your mind. Your mind is always working 24/7, period. While you're on this planet, your mind is working. Okay. That's why if you get the diagnosis brain dead, you know that person is already transitioning into the afterlife. Your brain works. So how do you control it? First, you sit still in a comfortable seated position. For me, when I start people who are beginners, sit anywhere that's comfortable for you, except while you're driving. That's what I say. Because if someone doesn't want to do yoga, but they feel comfortable sitting on the couch, then we're going to start there. All right. So you get to a comfortable seated position. You do want to activate your core as best you can. Close your eyes. We start there, breathing in and out of the nose. Get used to that. Got to get used to that, because we breathe in and out of our mouths sometimes. On the exhalation, acknowledge the thoughts. Then I go through a couple rounds of that. After you acknowledge your thoughts, let them go like a twig floating down a river. Let it go. You will deal with that later. So you're in the process of learning how to acknowledge the thoughts. I'm going to acknowledge what's on my mind, and then I'm going to let it go. Then, you're getting into the breath, connecting your breath to your still body. And this is when, as a yoga teacher, I observe the body. I'm observing what is going on in his face, what's going on in his neck, where are his shoulders, what's the posture like, all of that. So for me, I would start him with learning how to control his breath and releasing tension. That's easier said than done. But once you understand how to do that, that is the breakthrough to really kind of learning how to self-heal. From that modality, you go into different types of fasting and juicing and fueling the body with nutrients in a different type of way, but in a way that supports you living a lifestyle where you first try to prevent and second try to self-heal. Now, listen, I believe in modern medicine, but I also believe in ancient older practices, and that you find how they complement each other, because sometimes you need to use one before you use the other. So that's what I would do. We're going to meditate, we're going to fast and juice.
Gotcha. Yeah. Well, hopefully for Jacksonville Jaguars fans, all the losing, because I don't expect them to win a lot of games this year, but hopefully the losing doesn't end up in him having health issues again. But
yeah.
I definitely want to thank you for coming on tonight and talking about the effects of yoga and how it can help NFL football players, and of course giving us the expert advice for Julio Jones and Urban Meyer. But I want to thank you, but I want to also give you the floor and talk about all the things that you have going on, whether it be your website, where people can find you, all those things. The floor is yours.
Thank you so much. And I just want to say thank you for having me on. I really do appreciate it. As you can see, I love to talk about yoga and the healing benefits. I experience those so much. I lost 3 family members in a row, and it was devastating. And it was really yoga that helped me heal and talk about and flexibility. I lost a lot of flexibility, but I got it back because I got the breath. All right. So I do my group exercise classes at YogaGirlSy.com. You can see the name scrolling through. My IG is YogaGirlSy, and my email is YogaGirlSy@gmail.com. So all of it is YogaGirlSy. I do my group exercise classes and my private sessions. If you're interested in any of that, then just reach out to me at my email or on Instagram. I'm also Yoga Girl Psy on Facebook as well. So I'm also a priestess in Shrine of Ma'at, which is a Kemetic spiritual center. And I give free, or I don't like to use the word free, complimentary meditation classes every Monday at 5 o'clock. So it's with the Shrine of Ma'at. If you like that Facebook page, you can catch me every Monday at 5 o'clock for Monday meditations. On Tuesdays, I also have a show called Tuesday Talk, where I talk to people who are in the African spiritual community. We talk about different, the history of it, different forms of it, what's practical nowadays to use. If that's something that you're interested in as a practice, or even just something that's historical, that's interesting to you. So I do that on Tuesdays as well. So I'm here really to serve. I enjoy it. It's something that I wake up in the morning doing something related to either or one or the other of those things, but especially with meditation. And I also am working on putting together, holding spaces for Pan-African Black men and Pan-African Black women so that we can begin to heal. One of the things that's beneficial in our new day and age is the fact that everybody is recognizing the fact that we need to slow down and change the way that, most of us have been living. And so I deliberately do that for Pan-African Black men and Black women, because we need our space because of how things go with us. So that's what I do. I look forward to hearing from any and all of you.
Well, again, thank you very much for coming on. This has been touring the AFC South. We talked a little yoga with YogaGirlSy. Catch me on the next round, I guess.
Bye.